Alrighty. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Crew Chats. My name is Joe Reitz, and before we get started, just a couple of housekeeping items. In case you missed any previous episodes, please log on to either the Marketo community, and you can see kind of a backlog there, or from this YouTube channel itself, you can see the whole. This is the 12th episode, I think. So feel free to peruse those, subscribe to the channel. And keep the conversation going back on the Marketo community. If you have a question during the chat, we have this handy dandy lower third right here that has the hashtag crew chats. It's very, very confusing, but if you use that hashtag, we will see it and then we will answer your question on air. So with that, we're going to do a quick round of intros, and our fun fact for this week is the favorite gift you've ever given or received. And so again, Joe Reitz, strategist at Fathom. My favorite gift received was a Super Nintendo on December 1991. How about you, Jules?
Hi, I'm Jules James, assistant professor at St Edward's University. I guess the best gift I've ever given, or haven't given but will be giving soon, is a kidney. So I'm giving someone a kidney.
I was going to say, don't spoil the surprise, but hopefully that one's not too much of a surprise.
No.
How do we follow up on that?
I know. Why do we let Jules go first?
Sorry. But yeah, that's mine.
All right. How about Jeff?
Hi, Jeff Krajewski, Marketing Automation Specialist with PR Newswire, a Cision company. My favorite gift ever received is actually over here. If you can see it in frame, it's my poster from Empire Strikes Back.
Currently my favorite Star Wars movie, but that may change tonight. Smugs.
Hello, I'm Smugs. My parents call me Sydney. My favorite gift I've ever received was when I was 16 years old. I begged and begged for a KitchenAid stand mixer because I'm a huge nerd, and my mom was like, no, I will not get you one, and then she did, and it was a magical day. But my favorite gift I've ever given was completely ruined by Kanye West. I bought my husband tickets to see Kanye for Christmas and worked super hard on the surprise and requested off work for him and everything, and then Kanye canceled the tour.
Oh, man.
I'm not laughing at you, but like the anger was real in that moment.
The anger was real.
I'm happy that Kanye got all the help that he needed.
Rachel.
Hi, I'm Rachel. I do marketing or growth and marketing operations for T-Mobile, soon to be Adobe. And my favorite gift that I've ever received, well, one of them is the year I graduated from college, my parents decided to give me and all three of my sisters a like necessities package. So it came with like toilet paper and dishwasher detergent and like a whole bunch of stuff that I needed but couldn't afford at the time. So I made that last for a very long time, and it was very exciting. New college grad stuff.
Yeah.
You made toilet paper last a really long time. I
Yeah,
love that.
exactly right.
He's like tearing the plies apart, like.
No, it was like, it was like nice dishwasher detergent or like laundry detergent or like wine away because, I was drinking wine and spilling it all over my couch. So, yeah.
Got it.
A nice toilet paper, I can only presume, which is a necessity.
Yeah, like
Absolutely.
butterfly and whatnot. But Andy, on that note.
Quadruply, definitely. Okay, I'm Andy. I do marketing at Biz Library. And favorite gift I've ever received was probably the kitchen set when I was like 6 years old. I just remember being super enthralled with that when I got it. And I've watched like Christmas videos from the past, and I don't think I've ever been so excited about anything in my life.
And Jen. No, I'm sorry, Dory.
Okay, so I'm Dory Viscogliosi. As you all know, I don't know my own title, but here goes. Senior Marketing Operations Manager at Datto. So the best gift I've ever received was from my sister. I got a pink toolkit, And it's just kind of like cemented itself in our lives, because every time I need to do something that doesn't involve like actual power tools, I go and get the pink toolkit, and now John does as well. So that's just kind of a funny little bonus there. And then the best gift I've ever given was I gave John 2 kids. So there you go.
That's up there with kidneys.
Kidneys, kids.
Yeah, I'd rather the kidney than the kids, I think.
I know. Trust me, I think that a lot.
All right, now Jen, I'm sorry.
It's okay. I'm Jen. I am a marketing automation consultant at Rev Engine Marketing. My favorite gift I've ever given is I knit my mom a pair of socks last year. I got thrifty. And my favorite gift ever received was Polly Pocket had this mansion, and it came on like it came on this big bulk of like land, and it was like a massive house, and it had a farm, and it was like pink and beautiful. So I think that was my favorite gift.
I like how I was about to judge you though. Like I have anything better I can say about me.
The Polly Pocket Mansion is the female child version of the Super Nintendo, I think.
Yeah, that's probably true. Yeah.
I still have my Super Nintendo.
Me too.
So
Yeah, me too.
party at Rachel's house during Summit, where we
Perfect. Great.
School Mario Kart.
Yes.
Done.
So diving right in then. So yeah, basically as 2016 is kind of winding down, thank God. There's been a lot of changes that like you as a marketer just need to be aware of, and some of these are like quick easy things like Marketo has its fall release. We're going to talk about that today. Some of them are a little broader reaching, like CASL. We'll talk about what CASL is in a minute, but all these things have big impacts on kind of where your marketing strategy is going to go potentially in 2017. So on today's chat, like I said, we're going to be discussing all those changes and what kind of impacts they may have on you, the stuff you need to think about, be aware of. So, but before we do that, just wanted to share as our last crew chat of the year, just a few stats on the channel itself. Our first episode aired way back on July 15th. So we've been at this for about, 6 months? And as the name suggests, this is our 12th episode, and we're happy to say so far that we've never fallen off of our bi-weekly cadence, and we have many episodes planned already for 2017, bringing in several other Marketo champions and like a full panel of champs and experts like you see here. We have almost 90 subscriptions since we started to the channel, which I think is phenomenal. Love that you guys are finding this stuff useful. Anything else we can do, any topic wise, please feel free, like I said earlier, continue the conversation in the community, tag something onto the video, something to let us know what would be beneficial to you, and we'd be happy to lend our perspectives on that. But yeah, so back to our regularly scheduled program. The first thing we want to talk about is CASL. So Dory, can you give me give all of us kind of just a high level overview of what that is, and maybe make a White Castle joke?
Yeah. White Castle. I wasn't prepared with a White Castle joke. I'm sorry. So CASL is the Canada anti-spam legislation, and it's actually not new. It was really something that kind of took effect the very beginning of July of 2014. The reason why we're talking about it now in 2016 as something for 2017 is because if there was anyone for whom you had implied consent prior to July 1st, 2014, and you have not yet gotten their explicit consent or express consent to opt them in to your marketing strategy from Canada, all of this relates back to Canada, of course, then you legally don't have a right, you don't have their consent any longer to send them commercial electronic messages. So this is, what I would really advise for everyone, and what we've been working on recently is our internal strategy has been a collaborative discussion between the marketing operations team and our legal team. And so basically I said to legal, I said, hey guys, what would you want to have if someone from Canada ever came to us and said, prove that you have my consent to email me? Because they're the ones who are going to have to deal with it. It's really not going to be us at the end of the day as marketers. It's going to be our legal teams, most likely. So, you know, obviously we have to comply with it, but we're not the ones proving it at the end of the day. So that's the strategy that we've been using recently. And so we've been really separating people out, segmenting them based on forms that have been filled out. So there's some types of inquiries that can lead to implied consent for 6 months, although it's obviously not a best practice. You really want to have them, people opt in expressly, and you want to really have a record of everything. Jeff, do you want to jump in here a little bit and kind of explain what you guys do as well?
Sure. So again, as Dory mentioned, there are 2 methods. There's expressed consent, or the explicit consent, which is where someone would come in through your forms, for example, and check the box that says, yes, I'd like to receive marketing and sales type communications from your company. There's also what's called the implied consent, which for those that you are transacting with provides you a 2-year window. And that's really critical, because if you're not able to communicate with your customers, or don't know whether you are able to communicate with your customers, it's really a linchpin, if you will, in the system. So again, working backwards towards what legal would want. And one of the requirements of CASL is to, number 1, have your processes documented. Number 2, you have to have auditable records where the documentation and the documented methods with which the consent was collected, piece of information, like Dory said, the form, the IP address actually that they submitted through, you also want, because that can help weed out and negate anyone that might have come in and was spam botting you with a number of people and their email addresses. You know, you also have to have documented policies and procedures regarding your CASL compliance and how that is put into effect, as well as the last thing, which are the main last thing, which is the unsubscribe requests, and what is your process to handle that moving forward, and the resulting actions if anyone were to come to you and say, I need, you know, my name removed or my email address removed, and therefore what is the process moving forward? Because if you were to be audited or have any legal action taken against your company or anyone within Canada, then you need to have all this in place. That's what legal likely will come to you for, but you want to have it in place beforehand. And again, that deadline, while 2017 is really when everyone's going to be in crunch mode, I know I'm personally reviewing my company's procedures and policies, as are others, but one of the things you want to ensure is, if you are messaging to Canada, the real cutoff date is the last day in June. So if you're not compliant by that last day in June and you send something out July 1st, you're done.
Yep.
There's a $10 million per email per person potential fine that is implied as a result.
Right. I don't necessarily want to give people the wrong understanding about the July 1st cutoff, because that's actually only for names that you had in your database prior to July 1st of 2014. Any names that have come in since July 1st, 2014 as new names, you do not have, like, you need to have been following CASL since July 1st of 2014. So that this time of only applies to like old names from your database that you previously had implied consent, not express consent. So what we've been doing is we have a segmentation, and basically we say, and it was much more complicated before I was taking a look at things, and I think unnecessarily complicated, so that it opened up the risk of having more errors. So we actually have a segmentation that is, yes, we have your express opt-in, no, we don't have your express opt-in, and then default. So if you're not located in Canada, you're going to automatically fall into default. But if you're located in Canada based on the country that you have provided to us, your inferred country, or your area code, then we are putting you into that all Canada leads list. If we have your express consent, then you're on yes. If we don't, you're on no. And we've also marketing suspended, so that we don't really even have a risk of someone screwing up and sending to people who are on, like, not opted in. So basically, we've hoped to have covered all of our bases except for operational emails, but that's kind of a beast in its own.
Send everybody operational emails, it's fine.
Yeah, no big deal.
That's sarcasm, by the way.
Yeah.
And just for anyone that didn't catch it, episode 5 of Crew Chats spoke about workspaces and partitions, which if you're implementing anything for Canada, I highly recommend using partitions for your Canadian contacts as well as other countries. I know we have some other information coming for you there.
Workspaces, but yeah.
Cool.
But yeah, so Jules, from a, since we've got your transatlantic perspective, any other deliverability opt-in considerations in general for countries that aren't Canada?
Yeah, so for Germany, Denmark, coming into Austria and Switzerland, they're not as strict as Germany, but Germany's the strictest, is the double opt-in. So kind of similar to obviously the CASL law is when they can receive a piece of content by filling in a form, you then have to send them a follow-up email that they then have to click a link to agree to be opted in. So it's not even if they just tick a box on a form, you still have to send a follow-up email, and it's not until they've clicked that link in that second email that says, yes, I'm happy to receive it, do you have their explicit consent? So I don't know if it's actually a little bit tougher because it's not just ticking a box, you have to go that next step. That's why it's called the double opt-in. And it's, again, the fines are like 10 million per email per person or something ridiculous like that. So you have to be really careful. So we had set up lists that were Germany opted, like double opt-in, and they had a date when they sent the first form and the date that they actually clicked the link in the email to do that double opt-in, because we had to prove at what point they'd had the first opt-in and the second opt-in. So yeah, that was fun.
I'm having flashbacks.
So
go ahead, Rachel.
Yeah.
Oh, I was sorry. I was going to ask both on CASL and on European countries. So, if we have receipts that go out, if somebody comes in and fills out a form to, download a case study or something like that, are CASL laws applicable to like operational emails or what we would, in the US consider operational emails? Because here, I can just, they're saying, hey, I want this case study. I have a right to email them, what they asked for. Does that apply in Canada as well?
So where it's something that's more of a fulfillment email, if you will, that is allowed. What it really comes down to, because that's delivery of a piece of material, not necessarily coercing or trying to get them to transact or specific information about your product necessarily. If they filled out a form or requested that information, whether you present it on screen right away and follow up with an email or otherwise just the email, you do have that right. However, it's where you are sending unsolicited emails where they haven't come in and made that type of request that you have these restrictions.
Okay, so operational emails generally okay because they have requested that information. What if they're a client and you're sending out information about like we just had a big change as to how Chrome and Safari display specific ad tags. So we sent an email to all clients saying, hey, by the way, this is a change that's happening. Is that okay for me to email everybody because it's an operational email and they've chosen to work with us?
And they're a client already.
As a client, you legally have their opt-in, unless they've opted out, obviously.
Yeah.
But then if it's something that actually relates to your product functioning properly, even if they've opted out, you're allowed to message them. But generally speaking, basically, if they have a business relationship with you, you have consent, and then you also have implied consent for 2 years from when that contract expires. So if somebody stops being a client of yours, and then technically you can continue to message them for 2 years, whether you want to or not. Maybe that's a different story depending on how things were left. But a lot of times you still would want to, or be able to.
Okay, cool. So yeah, I just looking at the time, I want to make sure we fit in some of the other stuff, but I also wanted to make a joke about how CASL is an excellent way. And I had flashbacks to the first episode Smugs was on when she said, like, yeah, if you violate CAN spam, you're going to jail. This also could fund, though, public health care. So with $10 million fine per hit, maybe.
But now I think it's going to the individual. I think the rule was like, technically in July of 2017, I think they're able to not make it like a governmental thing. I think an individual now could go after you as well.
Well,
I could be wrong, but
no, as we know, I'm not.
Again, I'm not.
I'm not a lawyer, so just don't
Disclaimer, we're not lawyers.
None of us are lawyers. None of us give legal advice.
Yeah.
Our lawyers told us to disclose that we're not lawyers and we are not giving you any legal advice, therefore.
Yes. But yeah, moving on back to the next thing at hand was Marketo Lead Management. So back in, well, by the end of January, I think, like January 29th or something like that, Marketo is retiring their Marketo Lead Management package. We happen to be lucky enough to have the wonderful and intelligent, talented Jen DiMaria, who did a whole webinar on all the changes coming with that. Jen, can you give us a quick overview of like what's going on with MLM and like why it matters to Marketo users?
Yeah, so basically MLM is the app that you install in Salesforce that makes fields for you that sync into Marketo. So these are fields like most people are using lead source. This is your inferred country, inferred city, inferred state, stuff like that. And what's happening is that because that's going away, it actually makes the sync a little simpler moving forward for like new people who are setting up. However, for those of us who already have it set up, there's some things that we have to do, which is number one, recreate all of those fields. So now is kind of a good time to go through Salesforce and figure out if you're even using those fields, because like I said, most people are only using lead source, maybe acquisition program name is one that they're using. But if you're not using them, then you don't necessarily have to have them in there. So take inventory of the ones that you are using. There are 16 fields in total.
Yeah.
The list of all of them.
Lead and contact objects, right?
Yeah. So what you do is you take these fields and you recreate them with a new, so the current ones are pre-pended with MKTO 2 underscore. The new ones have to be pre-pended with MKTO 71 underscore. And what happens is you create them on the lead and the contact record and you map them. And then Marketo automatically, it just sees that this happens and it magically backfills all the information for you. But it'll only backfill the information until January 31st. So that's when you want to have all of these done by. And if you have any information, the webinar that I hosted is on the Rev Engine website. So we'll put a link to it and you can go check it out. All of the info is in there. We actually had Mike Reynolds from Marketo on the call with us, and he answered a load of questions from people. So if you have any questions, definitely check that out.
So is it that after the January date that it cuts off, like you can't, how does that work? You can't get backfill data past that, or I'm trying to parse what you were saying.
I believe my understanding is you can create the fields whenever and Marketo will recognize them then, but it won't necessarily backfill the data, at least not automatically after the 31st. But double check with support on that and see if there's anything they can do.
Yeah.
That was my understanding, but
I mean, the summary is that who does this affect?
Everyone who has Salesforce.
Yeah.
Which is like nobody.
Yeah, no one has that.
Yeah, no one
I
has
will
it.
say, as someone who has done it and didn't really know what they were doing, but lived to tell the tale, it's not that hard. It sounds like a much bigger deal than it is. It is something that you have to for sure deal with and take seriously, but it sounds a lot scarier than it actually is. I just had my Salesforce admin create all those fields. I sent her the product doc on Marketo about what was happening and how to do it. She created the fields and then they backfilled automatically, and Marketo sends you a little notification in your notifications thing that everyone ignores that says backfill complete, have a nice day. So
high five.
It's not that big of a deal, so don't procrastinate it because you have to do it.
Yeah, you have to do it. The worst part is probably if you have a lot of workflows or triggers set up based on those fields, because then you have to switch them. Salesforce.
Yeah, when you make the new fields, don't give them the exact same name. I'm sure you go over this little tip in the webinar. But when you make the new fields, I would advise giving them a slightly different name, like new or something, so that it's easier for the mapping. And then, because you can't rename the old ones, the old fields, since they're part of a package, can't be renamed. So
yep,
that will maybe help. But you have to update any references to those fields in Salesforce reports.
Yep.
Cool.
Yep.
Yeah, so last but not least, the last thing we wanted to just cover off on was Marketo's fall release, which came out December 9th. So totally, completely discounting Marketo's savage disregard of the Gregorian calendar. What are kind of the highlights?
It's still fall.
Yeah, right. I'm in Chicago. I can attest it is definitely not fall outside. What are kind of the big highlights from this release? What are the things that stuck out to you guys?
Well, they do have the nifty new ABM rollout, which I believe is the first ABM upgrade, so to speak, that they've done since ABM rolled out initially. I was on a webinar for ABM early adopters about just doing like a deep dive of the new functionality, and it was pretty cool. I think one of the biggest complaints up front about ABM is that it doesn't give a lot of easy visibility to sales. All this great account reporting that we have available in Marketo, it's not yet visible in Salesforce, and there's not a great way to show sales reps that. That problem is still not solved, but there is a way to set up automatic email reports to go out to an account team that you define for each account. You have to pull it off of a field on the account in your CRM to say like, okay, send the account owner, the SDR, and the customer success manager this report every week on Monday to show them like, here's the people that are most engaged in your account, all these different metrics for the account, how many opportunities you have open, that kind of thing, your total account score. So I thought that was really cool. And there's just some other like functionality tweaking that they've done, but I think that was definitely the biggest rollout for this release for ABM.
There's also something that probably only Jen and I would care about, or anyone else with a dark agency heart, is the universal ID. So like one login. Have you played with that at all yet, Jen? I haven't.
No, I haven't. I'm frightened. But I'm also I'm really excited for that. Because right now, so the universal ID basically lets you access multiple instances of Marketo, which, for Joe and me, we're living in multiple instances of Marketo every 30 minutes. So you have to have, right now you have to have a separate email address for every login of Marketo that you have. So this will cut down on a whole bunch of issues. My biggest issue is when you go into the community, you never know which ID you're logging under. And then anyone else who works, agency or in multiple instances, you never know who you're tagging. You never know who you want to be following. So this is going to cut down, I think, on a lot of confusion and just save me time, I think.
Yeah. Like I said, it's selfish for you and me, but
yeah,
big deal to us.
Or anyone like me that's in an acquisition type scenario.
True.
Yeah.
The other two things that jumped out at me, and jump in as you can weigh in, was predictive content, and then just basically new permissions for like operational emails and smart campaign restrictions. Does anybody have any deeper info on either of those? Where's that cricket sound?
Yeah. I don't have any deeper info, but I do think that it is about high time that we limited who was allowed to make emails operational and who was not. That was a long time coming, so thank you.
Yeah, between that and also the audit trail to see what people are actually doing in there, who's making updates to certain smart campaigns or items that are more operational in the background. I've seen certain forms that shouldn't be touched that have been approved, but obviously no changes were made. But that's the kind of thing that is scary to me in the background workings of operations. Yeah.
Well, and there's always like, even some teams I work with, like dividing the roles and responsibilities where you don't want someone that innocently to make a change that, hurts and does some kind of harm. Yeah. Or like, like we were talking earlier this week about like smart campaign sending limits. Like, do you limit how many people can be affected by one smart campaign? Sometimes you do that stuff, but like being able to lock down who has permission to what, I think between that and what's the witch audit trail, the witch hunty feature, I think those two taken in tandem, I think are Marketo taking a good step in the right direction to put more control into the hands of the admin, which I love. But does anyone like on the predictive content piece? I've only ever heard this in the context of RTP. So the email bit is a little new to me. Has anyone played with that or heard any good gouge?
I've seen it, but haven't utilized it. So it's, kind of a lost thing for me.
Do we even know like what it's like, where the, like, Marketo's machine learning. What's it learning from?
It sounds like the dynamic emails, because surely with dynamic emails, when you split them when you segment by industry, that's when you put the different content in, which is what I've always done. And that's kind of what RTP did, was when you segment by industry, depending on what content you put.
Inferred industry or inferred whatever.
That's all I can think. And that didn't work very well with RTP. So I'm not sure how it's going to work with emails. And if we can't see the emails that are going out.
Yeah. Well, and you'd have to set up
emails
differences too, but yeah. Well, that one I think is one to keep an eye on. It'll be interesting to see. Just to go down the line in our last, I know we're at time, but the big new features that were on the release were that predictive content piece, Facebook offline conversions, universal ID for your dark agency heart, ABM updates that Smugs talked about, change to the REST APIs, audit trail, a little bit of change in additional functionality, the new permissions like we talked about for smart campaigns and operational emails and that kind of thing. Which is another big thing, I think, who can send operational emails and who can't, because yeah, just gonna leave that one there. And then improvements to their mobile. So now you can have a push notification for iOS with a sound, which I thought you could have done before, but I guess not. And then some things for Sales Insight if you're into that. So if you want to get more info on just the whole fall release, when you're in Marketo, there's a big pop-up lower right corner. Just expand that, click with Wild Abandon, read the Marketo documentation, and learn more there. But it's now 3:01 in Chicago, and want to give you guys the gift of time now that I've taken an extra minute. But thanks so much for joining us on Crew Chats this year. We are really excited to hit the ground running in 2017, and really elevate the whole community conversation everywhere we can. So again, check us out on the community, keep the conversation going there, and we'll talk soon. Everybody's waving.